common question that people have about BaZi is, what if there is a missing element in my BaZi chart? What does that mean? Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? Now, generally, the perspective about missing elements is the general common sense for many people is, hey, something is missing in my chart, it doesn't look good, okay? But in reality, in BaZi, the missing element may not necessarily be a negative reading in a person's chart. So when we look at a chart, the elements cannot be completely missing, okay? It's just lack of affinity with a particular vibrational element in the chart. So let's just say now, in a BaZi chart, there are total absence of fire elements. So which means you look at the year of birth, the month of birth, and the day of birth, and the hour of birth. Inside this chart, there are 0 fire elements. So you can't find a single stem or branch or hidden stem. When we say missing, means even the hidden stems must not be present. That's what it means by a missing element. So when you don't see it in your BaZi, we say that the affinity or the connection with this particular element is somewhat absent in that person's chart. Now, the next part to this, how do you interpret that? Then you need to translate what that particular missing element is to this person. So let's just say you are missing the fire element in your chart, okay? It's like 0, right? You don't see a fire element at all. Now, there's a generic reading about fire element, and then there's a specific reading about that fire element. So let's say now the generic meaning is maybe fire element represents charisma, it represents overall energy or vibrancy, or about how animated that person is in life, or how dazzling someone could be, because fire element generally represents that expansion, that expansive energy someone can have. But just because it's absent in the chart doesn't mean the person does not have this at all. It's just that it's maybe slightly in general, for the general public to see this person is not exactly like an energetic person. They don't see it, they don't feel it. It does not mean that this person does not have it. It's just that maybe other people don't notice it because it's absent in the chart. This is a generic reading, okay? Now, the specific reading would be then to ask, well, what star is that fire element to this person? It can be a officer star, it can be a resource star, it can be an output star, and so forth, okay? So that particular star represents that aspect or that attributes that are somewhat weaker or not connected with that person. So might be, for example, the eating god star is the fire element and is absolutely missing in the chart. So it can be that the person, if you want trying to find the meaning of this, maybe that person will find it a bit harder to express his or her ideas in an art form, or in a written form, or in a poetic form, or in an artistic way, because the eating god actually represents that artistic expression of something. So maybe that person can mean that the absence of this element might find it, well, in general, without training, a little bit hard to articulate something. Maybe you will end up being a little bit deficient when it comes to expressions, okay? So it doesn't mean that person is not smart, it just means a bit harder to express. Now, so this might reflect in growing up, being in an environment where, their lack of training or lack of support for this might actually end up becoming that person a little bit deficient in communication, okay? So of course, how do you fix it? How do you fix it is not just, wearing red color and increasing physically the fire element around that person and then burning in the hot sun, okay? Doesn't mean that. Although a lot of people elementarily take this literally and say, all right, let's paint your room red, right? Let's hug a red carpet all the time and sleep because that's fire element. You need all this red color stuff in your room. No, that's not the case. When you find something is missing in the chart, and it's the person is young enough to to go through life education and training and all that. You want to put that person into maybe speech training at an early stage, or learning how to express oneself, participating maybe acting classes, for example, speech classes, speaking classes. So you want to, whatever the star is missing, the element is missing, you want to sort of support that with real life activities and training. The whole idea about Pazi is for you to do something about that, not do esoteric cure, such as putting something or wearing something. You know, that's very esoteric, and it's not exactly the real cure. The real cure is that the chart, the Pazi chart, is like trying to give you a diagnosis of what can happen and what's deficient in the person. So you fix that issue. Now, if you look at the same chart from the health perspective, the fire element can represent various organs, okay? Even the external of the chart, it represents the eyesight. In the internal of the chart, it can represent the heart, okay? This is one simple explanation of the fire element. There are, of course, a deeper level, which is, to be discussed in a different environment. But let's say it's the external fire element which represents eyesight. Then maybe this individual, by preparing for this, making sure that there are proper eye checkups from the start, making sure that the pressure is not too high in the eyeball. Sometimes you don't know that, right? And then it could develop into glaucoma, for example, in future stages. So you already know about this weakness. You fix it by seeing the doctor, right? I mean, you don't fix it because you wear red glasses, right? You got to wear red glasses, and because that's an esoteric way to saying, all right, red glasses will fix your eyesight because you're weak fire element. No, don't do that, okay? I find that that's the part where I think you're not really fixing the problem, you're just symbolically fixing the problem, right? So basically it's like trying to say, you want to eat lobster for your meal, and then you draw a picture of the lobster and paste it on the wall, and hopefully it manifests into reality. Not the king, right? So if you want to eat lobster, go to a restaurant that serves seafood, and hopefully they serve lobster, right? So that's the way to do that. So hopefully this gives you an insight as to what missing elements is. Now, sometimes the missing element, let's say now in a slightly more sophisticated environment, can be a negative star, like 7 killings, for example, or the 7 killings is actually in a harm position with your destiny chart, but it's actually missing, okay, due to a potential clash with the fire element. Now you may think, the fire is absent, how do I clash it? Well, for example, you have rat in the chart, and rat might clash horse, but you don't have horse in the chart. That's called an invisible clash. So now this, of course, will be stretching your imagination a little bit when you're doing readings, but if you are a seasoned user of Pazi, you can think of a chart from multiple dimensions, okay? So in this case here, since there is a absence of the so-called threatening element, that means in this person's life, there's no matter what danger that can come in, no matter how serious the danger is, because there's absence of danger in the first place, so generally you'll be safe for that person, okay? So it's not always a bad thing. It depends on context, guys.
Check inside the description for the link.